I shall not soon forget that awful night on the moors. I was happy in King's Pyland. At the time of my story, I was in my 5th year. I had already been an eminent racer for years, but at heart I am still a romantic colt, and northern Dartmoor is wild and free. Not that Colonel Ross permitted me to race across the moors. No, I was too valuable for that. But I breathed the bold spirit of the moors from dawn to dusk. I loved the rugged hillsides, the towering granite tors, and the mists that often veiled it all for hours before the sun could make headway. My mother taught me that a gentleman never boasts, and thus I face a quandary. I hope that mentioning a fact won't brand me a braggart. Possibly you have been on the continent and failed to recognize the name Silver Blaze. I have a white forehead, but no other white markings except a mottled-off foreleg. Thistle was my dam, and Isonomy my sire. Yes, the Isonomy, who in 1878 won the Cambridgeshire at Newmarket, and the next year both the Ascot Gold Cup and the Manchester Plate, and the next Ascot again. It was a legacy to trip even the most cocksure colt, yet I fancy I showed myself worthy. Foaled in 1885, I barely perspired in winning the 2,000 guinea stake in my 3rd year. At Ascot, I won the St. James's Place Stakes in a canter. At the time I speak of, I was the favourite in the Wessex Cup, with odds of 3-1. The Devonshire moor country round the stables is bleak and windy. About half a mile to the north, there is a small cluster of villas, which seem to be reserved as barns for lame and winded people. I have seen them seated in chairs on the lawn, their expressions reminding me of Black Simon after he broke his off foreleg in the St. Leger, wondering when they would come for him. 2 miles distant across the moor lay Capelton, which a sly trainer named Silas Brown ran for Lord Backwater. 2 miles to the west was the only sign of civilization, the village of Tavistock, rising above the bracken and furze. Wild moors sprawled in every other direction, populated only by the occasional gypsies, who smelled delightfully of pungent smoke, but whose livestock is not of the highest class. Mr. Straker, our groom, was a small man, light on his feet, who moved too quickly. He had been the Colonel's jockey for 5 years, but one cannot remain a colt forever. He had put on weight and could no longer ride as before, so he became a trainer for the Colonel, and had served in this job for 7 years. He had a bitterness about him that he tried to hide from Colonel Ross. Apparently, he succeeded. Sure in his views of the world, the Colonel accepted much without examination, and, like dogs who have been unchallenged in their yard for too long, he never doubted his own bark. Indeed, with his trim whiskers and dapper alertness, the old Colonel seemed like a terrier in gaiters and frock coat. Mr. Straker's modest house, where he lived with his wife and a single one servant girl, was a couple of 100 yards from my stable. 3 boys worked under Mr. Straker, tending my 3 friends and myself. At night, 2 slept up in the chaff-cutting loft above the harness room, and the 3rd down with us horses. I liked the boys more than I liked Mr. Straker, who was gentle with us only when Colonel Ross was near. He was a hard man and solemn. Something was terribly amiss with Mr. Straker. Late one night, I had glimpsed him in the paddock, laming a couple of sheep with a fierce little curved knife. The cries of the animals would have broken his heart, if he had had one. I remember it was late September, with the brambles and ferns bronzing the low hillsides. At 9 on that fateful evening, they locked the stables. The other 2 boys went up to the house for supper, leaving Ned Hunter to wait for his as he combed and brushed us. A gentle lad, Ned, and steadfast. I felt safe in the stable with him. There also were Bayard, another winning colt, smug but plucky. The other 2 horses, Plim and Meavy, cousins brought together from Major Ignatius at Whitcomb in